Welcome to the Queens of Quality podcast, where we talk about some of the basic and not so basic impacts of compliance and quality within the pharmaceutical and biotech industry. Your host, Micheline Bradley, has insight and stories from over 25 years in the industry, and each week she will meet you here to bust common misconceptions and myths, update you on industry news and trends, share great discussions with knowledgeable guests, and solutions to challenges that will make your life in bioscience not just easier, but more gratifying. All of this is done with a balance of levity and irreverence that is much needed for work that is inherently serious and has very real repercussions on patients' health and safety. The Queens of Quality can be found for free wherever you catch podcasts. You can check the show notes for our website, metisconsultingservices.com, and for more info. Now, please sit back and hold on to your hat. It's your favorite Queen of Quality, Micheline Bradley.
Hi, welcome back. This is Micheline, your host, and I am here today with Shane De Büchel of Community Quality Consulting, and today we are going to talk about data integrity. Welcome, Shane.
Thanks, Micheline. It's great to be on here.
Yay. Okay, so for fair disclosure, Shane and I are both members of SQA. And the way that we met was I put out a call for help with one of my clients for help with an equipment validation project. And Shane and I have been aligned ever since. To be fair, it hasn't been that long since the project came to its completion, but here we are. Shane, how did you get into this?
Oh, goodness. I got into consulting by happenstance. I'd been in quality for 12 years. I started batting around the idea of moving into consulting. I got into quality a couple of years after I graduated college with just a general biology degree. I was like, I don't know what to do with this degree. Let me look around. And even when I graduated college, there was still a challenge to enter the workforce. So I had to take a non-degree based option and keep applying. And then thankfully I had a company that was like, yeah, we'll take a chance with someone with no experience, come straight into quality assurance. Jumped in to a bioanalytical lab. That was a contract research organization. And deep water right away, learned all about method validations, computer systems, sample analysis, sample tracking, and enjoyed it. It was fun learning the regulations and being able to interpret them and help others comply. I just slowly worked my way up eventually to a management position. And then once I got into management, it was interesting to see how much more of your time focused on meetings and the politics of corporate life versus the actual quality and helping people understand the regulations and really bringing forward that compliance aspect. So that's where I started to lean more into consulting and being able to help actually drive and make a difference.
That's one of the things that I found also in management and the in-house positions, that there was so much more emphasis on the meetings part and so much less on doing the actual pieces that made the operations and the organization go.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that drew me to consulting, is because I like to help to solve the problems. And the regulations part, I just think that they're fascinating, and the nuance of them and how we can ensure the quality piece. And that's one of the things that I bring to my clients on a regular, is that compliance with regulations is really the lowest rung on the ladder.
Exactly.
We really have to have that there. And so let's talk a little bit about the data integrity piece. So you were one of the co-authors. Tell us about this project.
Yes. There was a call put out through Society of Quality Assurance, SQA, that you mentioned previously, for some authors, and over 100 of us Many of us applied. Over 100 of us made it out to North Carolina. And over the course of 2 days, we were divided into groups, given topics for our chapters. We even had a chapter chair, and we brainstormed, started writing our chapters. And that's the data integrity, the regulations, the science, the use, available through Barnes & Noble. And I got to join in on chapter 3. Can't remember what that chapter's title is now, but it was fun to reread my chapter and recognize the parts that I directly influenced for that chapter, as well as just the knowledge that was shared with my team. It was just so fun to see so many quality professionals gathered in a space to just share their knowledge and experience across the industry, the different regulatory sectors, whether it was GCP, GLP, GMP, pharmacovigilance. The range of information shared was astounding.
Excellent. So what did you learn out of that, and what did you bring to the table, and what can you share with us about data integrity? Other than that, we know that the data integrity piece is integral and critically important.
It is absolutely important. The biggest thing that I brought to that experience was my years of experience with the contract research work. That allowed me to learn a lot of various aspects of a quality management system. Some people with big companies or maybe manufacturing, they kind of get siloed into different aspects of quality management. And being a small CRO, I had to learn all of it over my course of my career, be able to apply it. And I brought that forward, as well as having been parts of a international organization that had a manufacturing arm, a clinical arm, and a laboratory arm. It also allowed me to see how the regulations kind of crept into one another, and there was overreach. So being able to discuss the different application of data integrity. And then I think the biggest thing about data integrity is it's a twofold approach. You have to start with quality data, and then you have to preserve that data over time to ensure you have data integrity. If you don't start with quality data, you don't have a good product that you can rely on for the indefinite future to influence decisions that ultimately impact the lives of whether it's animals or people.
Absolutely. And then what are some of the pieces where you've seen organizations drop the ball on the data integrity piece? Are there any low-hanging fruits that we can prevent before they happen?
I think there are plenty of low-hanging fruits across the different industries, unfortunately. The most simple one that I've seen picked out a lot is training records. For some reason, that gets overlooked, and that is very important because every regulation talks about you have to prove that your people are educated and trained and that you have a record of their current training. And some people make the training systems too complex, others make it too simple, and it really has to be customized to your business. Like most any of these data integrity aspects, you have to really think about how it applies to your business that you're working in, your company. You can take lessons from others, you can bring stuff on from other companies or consultants, but it ultimately is, how is it going to work with your company? I think the second most important part of low-hanging fruit is getting the companies, the individuals, to recognize, especially whenever they work in electronic systems or hybrid systems, where it could be paper and electronic, what actually is the raw data. There can be a lot of confusion on where that raw data lives, what comprises the raw data. So then you don't have the quality of generating the raw data first place or maintaining that raw data in all aspects over the life of the data.
Can you go speak a little bit more to that, of maintaining the raw data throughout the life cycle?
So maintaining the raw data, if we're talking about just a paper-based system where every company basically started out, you have a form you're using at the benchtop, you document every step, every little piece of information to reproduce that procedure for future use. You have it signed by the person who did it. You have it dated for when it was completed. Everything's legible, complete, accurate, contemporaneous, documented in real time, original, so we're not just remembering things from our head. All the components of Alcoa and the plus plus that more of the European group talks about, enduring, it's traceable, it's complete, consistent. The consistency and traceability can be big challenges, whether it's paper-based or electronic or hybrid, because every study director or project manager or PI, they kind of like to do things differently. And that can be the biggest struggle for a company to pull the reins back on. There's going to be nuance between every study, but there has to be some level of consistency. And then we move into a hybrid system where they have paper plus electronic. Your paper data that you documented at the bench or wherever you're actually generating that paper data is your raw data. If you have electronic system, you need to be able to recognize, does this electronic system create a set of data report? If it's a lab information management system, the actual input becomes your raw data. And the raw data isn't simply the data that's populated, it's also the metadata when we're talking about electronic files. And that stuff captures all of your wonderful changes, who did what. If there are stop gaps within that electronic system, those are part of your metadata. And of course, there's still an audit trail with electronic data. And that's still very important to keep. And then you have companies that are purely electronic. That's where everyone wants to go, because then you're supposed to be reducing human error with going electronic. But you can, with every system, you can only program it to prevent your most incompetent user. And humans are great at errors. It's the best thing we do. Regardless of how many times we've done something, we'll make an error. So even with electronic system, you still have to program it. You have to put in stop gaps, all these measures. And again, identifying where that raw data is. Take a mass spec file through Analyst. You have specific files that you have to look at to be able to recreate the data. There's one that is created by the system that stays static the whole time. And then you actually process it in Analyst or whichever system and software they're working it into. That's different. And this can hold true with a lot of systems. There's a static file, but that reprocessed file could change a little bit every time the data is reprocessed. And reprocessing of data, it can happen. But the raw data, that original file, is always what we have to point back to.
So I'm a big fan of moving away from paper and moving to electronic, in part because I feel like there's a traceability that we gain that's a lot faster to identify with electronic than with paper. And sometimes, often I will joke that, if we're still working in a paper system, like, did everybody make sure that they were given their abacus and their, did you get the abacus and the smoke signals detector and interpreter with that? Because it feels very archaic to me, because right now it is the middle of 2025 and we need to ensure that we're actually being forward facing. And that's one of the things that I look at is, where do you want to be in 6 months? Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? How are we going to point the system in that direction? At the same time, I understand that there are issues, and what you said is actually perfect about, as humans, that's something that we excel at, is making mistakes. And so there is that programmatic piece that we need to make sure that we account for, and that we do maintain that primary raw data file that we can continuously point back to. What what do you see as the biggest impediment to that maintenance of that initial raw data file?
I think right now, with it being 2025 and so many technologies that are being used for life sciences are becoming software as a service or cloud-based, the biggest challenge we're going to be facing moving forward is recognizing where that raw data file lives. Our technology used to be on-premise, on the server that was at your location. So you were totally responsible for maintaining your data file. It was all on you. You owned everything. So a lot of IT professionals were more comfortable with that, and they figured out the ways to back that up regularly, to reinforce it, to make their copy down with their archive files. With it being cloud-based, now you really have to focus on your service agreements. Your service agreements with that vendor have to be very robust to say that they are actually responsible for maintaining that data file for you, that you can access it as needed whenever you need, and that they have a retention period that matches what you need. And if they don't, that they have to be able to supply you that raw data file. And if it's a copy, they have to be able to ensure and prove to you that they have a robust, validated process to give you that copy so you can rely on it for future moving forward.
And so the validation piece.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the validation piece for just a few minutes. I know that we laugh and we say that just because of, I feel like so many people don't understand what goes into the validation piece, and there's a line between overdoing it and underdoing it, and
Yes.
most people lean to the underdoing it, and they're like, well, that's it, like it's done, like we did these pieces, what are, like this part isn't necessary. Or my other favorite is like, no, these are the people who need to run these scripts, and they need to do all of the steps. They need to read all of the words. You need all of the pieces. So if you can speak a little bit to the validation piece.
Absolutely. You hit that nail on the head with people love to overdo it or underdo it. And very often, because of that working for profit, like that's the end goal, they underdo it because they want to get it done as quickly as possible. And ever
So
since
that's something that I want us to also hit on. So go ahead with the underdo it and profit.
Yeah. Ever since 21 CFR Part 11 came out, the FDA, if you look at their preambles with that and their talking points with it, it's always been the computer system assurance. It's never been this full, hard computer system validation where you have to check every single box. It's always been a risk-based approach. That's what they intended. FDA likes to write kind of gray, whereas OECD, it's a lot more black and white, easier to follow. So their Annex 11, it's more straightforward, but still that was risk-based. And if you get into GAMP 5, waterfalls, all the other ways you can do computer validations, it's risk-based. So if we always focus on this risk-based approach, and it's risk-based of, yeah, start with the vendor. Is that a risk you're willing to take? And then once you choose your vendor, then you can move into the software and focusing on how they manage their change controls for their versioning. Do they actually produce a nice list of what changed? So you, as the user, before you roll it out at your site, are you able to confirm things are actually impacted, what testing what you need to do? And you have to have your own change control system for rolling that out. So you have to start very simple, identify your risks. What types of controls can you put in place for risks that you know are going to exist? What risks are you just simply going to accept and there is no control? And oftentimes, if you get to that level where there is no control, it's about how severe is that risk and how much will it impact your data and your integrity of your data. So you have to start with a validation plan once you've identified your wonderful vendor. And that should include your user specifications, your design specifications. There's a lot of different ways you can phrase that. your risk assessment of the system as a whole, of its compliance, of the vendor's compliance, the traceability matrix to identify what you say in your plan, where it's proven, where it's going to be reported. I love a RACI matrix in there too, to show who's actually responsible for different aspects, who's going to report on them. And then as you move through the testing, of course, you have your implementation, you have your operating, your installation, operating, and then your performance qualification documents.
Right.
And if it's cloud-based, there's not installation. You just kind of get access to the server, so proving that that's secure because they're holding your data. Oh my gosh, that's scary, having to give up that control. The operational piece, again, if it's cloud-based, it may not really be there. You're just buying their package and you're working with it. Or you may have to prove that you already use this system. Does this system produce similar results? Okay, then we can say that they're still good. And then your performance is really based on how that system is going to be used in your house. So a lot of times vendors provide a PQ. It's generic. It may not hit what you need it to because you're using it at this upper limit, this upper threshold that they're not working with. Mm-hmm. Or you're using this entire wide threshold, but only for certain pieces. So you could validate part of it early on to start using it, and then know that you have additional validation that you're going to be doing over time to continue to expand the range of that instrument. And hopefully it all goes smoothly. There are absolutely no issues. That's what we would love. Never happens. There's always going to be issues.
Right.
Humans,
right.
So
and I think that one of the pieces that I find to be particularly problematic within that is my preference is to not use the vendor provided scripts because they are generic and high level and they don't speak directly to what the functionality of the system, whether it be equipment, computer system, really it fits it runs the gamut, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you're doing it to do fit for purpose,
yes,
then you're not getting the whole picture. And I know people who are like, oh no, we just run the vendor scripts because they know best. And I'm like, you need to know best. You need to know best what you are going to be using this for. The vendor may be using it for something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be what you need it to do.
And there have been several warning letters from the FDA that have pointed to that specifically. You only use the vendor proven PQ. That in no way proved that the performance worked for your site.
Exactly. And that I think is a perfect segue into the triangle piece, right?
Yes, it's profit, timing, quality. Like there's this wonderful triangle that talks about you can have speed, you can have quality, you can have cost. You can never have all three. If you cut cost, you're going to lose out on speed or quality. If you really want to do something really fast, then you're going to lose out on quality or the cost. If you want really great quality, it's going to come with cost and it's going to move just a little slower than what you want it to. So many companies are focused on that dollar because of our capitalist society. It's all about making money. We all want to be able to pay everyone's bills, but it is always about making as much money as quickly as possible. And in doing that, you're losing out on speed or quality somehow. And where are you willing to put that risk as a company?
And I think that brings us right back to what we talked about at the very beginning of that regulatory compliance or compliance with any piece it should be the lowest rung of the ladder. Like that should be the low-hanging fruit. Like it has to be compliant. There is no discussion about that. What we need is for us to be, and the thing that makes it kind of ridiculous to me is I look at how much faster it is to do things like build an EDC
mm-hmm.
now than it was when everything was paper-based. And I know that this is showing my age, but when we were sending out packets of CRFs in triplicate to sites to fill out, and now everybody's like, what do you mean you can't get my database build done in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Like, do you remember, like, so, and that's in my working lifetime in this industry, which, I mean, I'm old, but I'm not that old. And, but that's very much where I think we have this disconnect of, it's not always about faster, damn it. We also have to make sure that we save time for the quality piece. And look, you can pay for the quality now.
Yes.
Or you can pay exponentially more later.
Yeah, exactly. It's always cheaper to put the quality in the beginning than at the end.
Yes. That is one of the biggest pieces, I think, where we see, where we hear people say, we just don't have time. We don't have the time or the resources for ensuring this quality piece. And, really, you're too expensive. And I'm like, okay. And then later, it's like, wow, maybe we should have listened. Maybe.
Yes, that's the regulations point right to that. Management has to provide the resources. Resources are people, the environment, the technology to be able to get the job done appropriately by the bare minimum, like you're saying, regulations, but also industry standard. And the companies are pushing each other to make sure that they are the best, and you're always wanting to outcompete your competitor. So if they're doing something that truly does make sense from a quality perspective, you should be doing it too.
Yep. Because, okay, so not to try to beat this too hard, but from a sponsor client perspective, so if your client is the sponsor organization, they need to have the quality piece there, because what they're looking at is direct to patient. So, and it's all about the patient. That's one of the kind of, we have multiple slogans within Metis, my organization, and one of the big ones is, it's all about the patient. The patients come first. The patients come first. Like, it may seem like we're so many steps removed from it, but we're always looking at the patient safety and what best benefits the patient.
Yeah.
And then, so that's where the accountability lies. Within the sponsor organization, you are responsible for the patient, and you need to make sure that all of these pieces fit together and be patient focused. Everybody needs to be playing on the same team. That is really hard for people.
It is.
Everybody needs to be playing on the same team. We need to cut out the silos within organizations, and we all need to be working in the same direction and, rowing the same way.
Yes.
Within the contract organizations like CROs and CDMOs and all of those pieces, they need to ensure that their quality is above board at all times, because they are doing the work that these companies are outsourcing, and they have direct impact on the patients.
Yes.
It's a step back, but it's still there. Like, we have to hold those responsibilities first and foremost.
Yes.
Our responsibilities are to ensure that we are compliant with the regulations so that the patient is safe. And for some reason, this is really hard for people. And they're like, no, we don't have the time or the money for the quality piece. It's like, oh, but you will.
Yes. And it seems like when they say they don't have the time or the money, they don't think that they will make a big enough error that would influence things later downstream. And it could be a simple rounding error that one person looks at, they're like, oh, it's no big deal. It's within 5%, which scientifically speaking, most will justify that's acceptable. And then as things move downstream, this 5% keeps growing exponentially, and suddenly you're off by 40%. That's a concern.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a rate limiter.
Yeah.
So I love this stuff. And I'm really glad that you took the time and we had this opportunity to talk here. And I also wanted to bring up that you are moving from the US to Europe.
Yes.
Specifically to Ireland. Get that grin. Look at that grin.
I'm excited for it. This whole move across the pond, it's been a long time coming. I actually grew up in England when I was little for 4.5 years. I enjoyed it, came back to the States and missed it. And my wife got to go to Europe on a solo trip before we met, and she fell in love. She went to Ireland, and she says as she stepped off the bus there in Dublin, and just felt like she was home, and
Nice.
hasn't gotten that feeling anywhere else. And when we got together, that was something we discussed. It's like, yeah, that's an agreed upon goal. And now that I have the opportunity to really see it through, I'm taking the chance and going to do everything I can to get myself and my family across the pond so we can enjoy an easier life, because being a queer person, there's some struggles there in the US that other places in the world don't have. And they actually protect people like me. And that is something that I am looking forward to have protections for my life, my well-being, and my family's well-being.
Excellent. And you will still be available to do consulting.
Absolutely.
On the US side, you'll just be in a different time zone for us.
Yeah, it's not that hard of a deal for me to work a little bit in my morning. Then I can take this nice break in the afternoon, wait until the US wakes up, and then come back to work some more. It's very easy. And being a US citizen, still flying back, doing work actually on site won't be an issue. And then over time, hopefully getting a citizenship for Europe as well, and then being able to travel around Europe freely too, to again do stuff on site and just opening up the opportunities and the possibilities. It's all about just living the life you have, and not surviving it, but living it.
I'm really happy for you.
I appreciate that. Super excited.
Excellent. Well, I certainly hope that we work together more in the future. And I very much appreciate you being here with me today. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please contact us at hello@metisconsultingservices.com. And we can also put you in touch with Shane.
Absolutely. Look forward to working with you more in the future as well. And any other opportunities that come your way or mine, I'm so excited to see both of us prosper.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Queens of Quality podcast, and a special thank you to our incredible guest. By the way, we love hearing from you, our listeners. Please let us know what you think, or if you have any questions or comments, or if you would like to be a guest on the Queens of Quality podcast, you can email us at hello@metisconsultingservices.com, or check the show notes for more ways to contact us. I promise we read every email and take your thoughts into consideration for future episodes. And as always, if you could, take a few moments to rate or review us on your favorite streaming service. It makes a huge difference in getting the word out. Remember, folks, quality means patient safety first, and we are the Queens of Quality.